Hello, Jen. Welcome to the Joy Curator podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I could not be more delighted to have you on the show today. I told you before we jumped on, I'm like, I'm kind of fangirling.
I never know what to say when people say that, but thank you. Thank you, but I'm not worth it. Don't do
Yeah, no,
it.
no big deal over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. After reading Midlife Bites and probably annoying every single human that was around me because I was laughing so unbelievably hard poolside this past winter, I knew immediately that I needed to have you as a guest on the show because I laugh a lot, but not like usually I wouldn't be creating maybe quite such a scene while I'm reading a book, but I was in hysterics. And my one of my besties who was with me, like every 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, just one more line. I'm just gonna read this one more line to you because it's just so good. So, anyways, I'm
Oh,
so excited to chat with you today on the show.
thank you. That's awesome. That's high praise.
um, well, us women, we got to stick together, right?
Right.
Um, so you are just hilarious. And I love how honest and real. I think that's what made reading this book feel so incredibly enjoyable because it really did feel like you were just sitting beside me saying out loud what I imagined you were just saying out loud to a friend. I think that's what it felt like. Like we were just instantly friends while I read the
Mhm.
book because it just felt so relatable and so real. And that's what I loved about it. So, for my listeners who have maybe not yet read the book or your blog and followed along as you built your career, you started this all with your People I Want to Punch in the Throat blog, which come on, like I that title alone, like who doesn't want to follow along that? We've all thought it, right? How did share a little bit of the background here on how that all came to be and how you started feeling comfortable sharing the realness of your own life in a public platform?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, you're right. So I started my blog, People I Want to Punch and Throat. I started that back in 2011. I was a work at home mom. I had two young kids, and my husband and I worked together selling real estate, and we'd been doing it for several years at that point. And I always think that couples that work together are going to get divorced. And so I just kept waiting. And he was just like, I never had any alone time, like, because he had this great idea that since we worked from home, our kids didn't need to go to daycare or anything. So
Right,
our kids would just like, he thought they would just like play quietly at our feet, like while we
right.
were.
Sounds simple. Yeah.
Yeah, so simple. And so by 2011, I was just like ready to pull out my hair and run away. And so my husband was like, "Well, you should start a blog. You know, everybody has one. All the moms have one." And it was sort of the year of the rise of the mommy
Yeah.
blog. It did seem like everybody did have one. And I went out and I looked at them and I just thought, this is crazy. Like these women are insane. They're on drugs or something because it was so perky. Like it was just, it was like I love nothing more than like baking with my 2-year-old. It's a science lesson, a math lesson, an art lesson. And I'm like, oh God, kill me before I'd have to bake with a 2-year-old again. And I remember there was a lady who like you'd clean your house with her like on a schedule. And so she'd be like, Wednesday's dust day, ladies, dust, dust, dust. And I was like, no, we can't.
I
And
can't.
and
Yeah.
so I just thought, if this is mommy blogging, then I don't want to do it.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
not for me.
Mhm.
And so my husband was like, no, don't you see you'd be like the anti-mom blogger? You're the one who you'll tell the truth. Like, I love my husband, I love my kids, but I buy new underwear instead of doing laundry. I want to run away. My house hasn't been dusted in 5 years and we're fine. We just have bad allergies. We're cool
Yeah.
with that. And and so I thought, okay, yeah, I could write that, I guess. And I was like, but what would I call it? Because everybody had really cute names back then. It was just really fun, like super neat, fun names that I could not come up with. And he said, oh, that's easy. I'll call it People I Want to Punch in the Throat because you say it all the time. And so sure enough, people I want to punch in throat.com was still available the next day when I went out to buy it.
Who would imagine that
I
that
know.
like website would be available?
Right. So I went out and I bought it, and everything was great. And I just got started writing kind of like as therapy, like when I would be, I don't know, irritated about something and I needed to vent, I would write a blog post on there. And I've always been I've always been a venter, and I've always been someone who can kind of make it funny, I guess. Like I find the humor in the pain of it all,
Yeah.
know. And So I just started writing these posts, and I would share it on my personal Facebook. I didn't know anything about social media yet at that point. And so I would just share the link to on my personal Facebook page. And so everybody who read me was like my family, or they'd gone to college with me. And so I had like 70 readers. And then that Christmas season, I wrote a blog post about my elf on the shelf. And
Yes.
I wanted to put my elf on the shelf in a coma. I think I was the first one to put him in a coma. Like during COVID, everybody sent him to the ICU. But
Yes.
in those days, Pinterest had just come into existence. And so everybody was like high achieving with this dang elf.
Yes.
They were doing all kinds of fun, creative things that I couldn't even remember to move it from one shelf to the next. And
Mhm.
so I wrote a post about that, and that went viral. I struck a nerve, and it was read a million times in 24 hours, and sort of started everything. Because at that point, I learned quickly about social media. I
Yeah.
quickly created a Facebook and a Twitter, since all that existed back then was Facebook and Twitter and,
Yeah.
Pinterest. And so I threw a picture on there so I could say, so I could put it on Pinterest. Um, and then it kind of just took off from there. And so, that night I was sort of like freaking out, and my husband was like, well, what are you going to do tomorrow? And I was like, oh, no, no, no. Like this will never happen again. Like I can't. And he was like, no. And at that point I had about 17,000 people following me on Facebook already. And so he's like, you have 17,000 people that want to hear from you. Go talk to them, go
Yeah.
entertain them. And so that's always kind of been my focus, is I just focus on the people who want to be with me. And over the last few years, it has grown. I think I have 1 million followers on social media now, and tons of books, and so just lots, like 600 blog posts or something like that. And so um and it's at the beginning I was anonymous, and that made it a lot easier to sort of share my life and share my mistakes, I guess, and sort of make fun of myself and make fun of my kids and my husband and my neighbors. And and so I was anonymous at the beginning, mostly to protect my children, though, because when I went viral with the elf, 99% of people agreed with it and wrote to me and sent me great emails and comments and stuff. But like there was like 1% out there who wanted to steal my kids.
Right. Yeah.
And that really scared me. It was my first time sort of dealing with internet trolls. Like I said, before that, it'd all been people who knew me, who read my stuff. And so it really frightened me. And so I went deep underground and hid my kids, because they were young and they would have left with anybody with a puppy or a balloon or something. And so,
Absolutely.
now they're going to be turning 16 and 18 next month. And so it's like, now I'm just like, does anyone want them for the weekend?
Yeah.
Like,
Any post that I could write that would lure them to you. Yeah.
right. I'm like, as long as you have strong Wi-Fi and Venmo, they'll be fine. But yeah, so I started writing anonymously, and I was still working full time at that point. So I'd write at night. I'd put my kids to bed and I'd write at night and try to figure out what I was going to write for the next day. I'm a pantser, so I never know what I'm going to write. And I just started telling stories or observation. I do a lot of observational stuff, kind of whatever's hot in the news I would talk about and give my 2 cents in case anybody wanted it. you know?
Yeah.
And then but the blog has been like a great way to sort of sound out like what readers want, because with it's the elf went viral, but that's not the only post that's ever gone viral. And so it's like I kind of figure out what they want. And midlife bites actually came from a viral post as well. That was something that I wrote, and it resonated, and I thought, and my editor at Penguin Random House like emailed me, I think within an hour of me posting it, and was like, this is your next book, dum dum, get writing. And so so it's been really helpful. Like I think a lot of people kind of poo poo on blogging at this point, and I actually just started up again. So like I'm back in it, because I think it's just a good way to keep in touch with your audience.
I agree. I love that. And I think you nailed it by saying, like, you love writing and you love being able to share your own personal experiences, knowing, maybe not knowing at the beginning, but for sure knowing now that you're striking a chord with people, obviously, if they're following along and that posts are going viral and your book is selling and all of these things. But I think that's the part that sometimes we as business owners and, shall I say, women, we get so caught up in feeling like we have to do things in this like certain way, or like, oh, well, nobody's blogging anymore, so I shouldn't. Well, to enjoy the process of it versus be like, oh, I'm only doing this because I want a post to go viral is such a
Yeah,
very different experience, right? And I think
right.
that's so beautiful that you've been able to kind of tap into using it as therapy in the first place. That's why I write too. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
sees it for myself, but yeah, that you use it for something that the whole process is bringing you joy, not just the idea that the
Yeah.
end result went viral.
Well, that's the thing. I think when it starts to feel like a job, like that's when I try something new. And so with the whole blogging thing, and I'll get to a point where, because it's like, I love having, of course, I love having like this large social media because it affords me to do all kinds of things and gives me
Yeah.
all these opportunities. But then after a while, I do kind of feel like I'm out of touch with them. Like I don't feel like I know them, or,
Mm,
and so that's why I kind of keep changing it up and trying to get back in there. You know, I've created lots of groups. Like I have all these private groups on Facebook, and people can, for different interests that people can join. And
yeah.
that way I can like kind of talk to them. But yeah. And so I just decided, I thought I have something to say still again. And not everything is book worthy. And so, between, and then I have a podcast too, but my podcast is more about like, I just kind of want to meet people and like talk to them and find out what their deal is. It's not so
Yeah.
much about me, but I kind of have I had opinions I wanted to share that don't go in a book. So I was like, I'm going back to blogging. I don't know if anyone's going to read it, but I'm doing it.
Yeah, totally. They each just kind of have their own purpose, right? I love
Mhm.
that. Well, and I turned 40 this year. So reading Midlife Bites, stumbling across Midlife Bites, literally found it on Instagram. Somebody had hashtagged something else that it had popped up on, and randomly just decided to like pick a couple books up for my vacation that I wanted to read because it's hard to find other times to read other than
Mhm.
sometimes being on vacation. So this happened to be the one that joined me in my suitcase all the way to Mexico, and was reading this book poolside and just thinking, I hadn't turned 40 yet. I was on the cusp of turning 40 right before I read this book. And as I'm reading this, already understanding and seeing the things that are coming through her, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this just absolutely nails exactly all the thoughts that are going through my head, the things my friends and I talk about, the things that I'm working with my clients on in my business, like all of the things. And I love how you've taken this like honest and hilarious depiction of what can actually feel like a really challenging time of life, which you also, the whole book is not just pure comedy. You are very
Mhm.
serious about a lot of the topics that are in there. So how did you take these things as you were actually living through this on your own? You are
Mhm.
the, at least in my mind, maybe this is just the way that it was written, but it feels as you're reading the book like you're actually living this out as you're writing it, and you're in this messy middle piece while you're writing it. You haven't like fixed all your problems, everything hasn't like happily ever aftered, and then you decide to write the book. It feels
Right.
like you're just in the throes of all of this crap
Yes.
while you're writing it, and that feels so real. How did you decide to put that all out there for the world to see while you're living it?
Yeah. So I think I have to give credit for that to my editor, Pam Cannon at Penguin Random House. So when I wrote the blog post was really visceral. Like it was not funny at all. It was, I mean, I was sobbing when I wrote it. It was really
Oh,
dark and really kind of just like visceral and raw. And the responses I got were just like, oh shit, I feel like, oh, can I cuss? I'm sorry, I just
oh
cussed.
yeah, you're good. We'll put a little rating on this episode.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I'll try to keep it clean, but it just flows like water
It
out of
just
me.
flows.
So, um, but I was like, there were so many people that are feeling that way. And I think that has always been my thing. Like my whole purpose of writing is to make other people feel like they're not alone, because I have felt so alone so much in my life. And the internet is a horrible, place sometimes, a lot of times, and especially, over the last 10, 15 years, it's gotten super bad. But it's also like this amazing place where you can just find your people and you can
Yeah.
find who you need to see and who you need to talk to. And so I've always been kind of focused on that like all my friends in the computer,
Uh-huh.
And so when I realized like they were kind of in it too, and I wasn't the only one, because I really did think I was the only one feeling like that. I just thought everybody else has it together. Like everybody else knows what they're doing. And I don't. And so when Pam reached out and was like, this is your next book, we'd been kind of thinking about what to do next. And she's like, this is it. Like, it's time to pivot. Cause I call it angry self help. It's like, and that was where I kind of felt like but I kind of felt like a fraud, because I'm like, I'm not a doctor. Like, I'm not anybody. Like, I haven't even gotten through it myself. Like, I don't even know. Like, I have no answers really. And she was like, I don't think you need answers. I think you need to just talk about what works for you, what you've tried and didn't work for you. Just be honest. She's like, do what you always done. And so I would write, and I think this book went through about 7 drafts, which is unusual for me. And because every time I would send it in, she would be like, go deeper. And I was like, oh, and I really like to hang out in the shallow end of the pool. And so I was like, I can't. And she's like, go deeper, like give me more. And so her pushing me really helped that. Um, I'm glad to hear you think it's funny because I was literally finishing it up when we were all in lockdown back in like March of 2020, March, April, and it was dark out there. I was trying to entertain people on the internet while lots of people were suffering, and I didn't quite know where the line was.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure I felt that funny, obviously. And so writing that book, I was like, God, I hope this is funny. Like, I don't know. And I think that, but I think that actually kind of helped too, because so many people were honest about their struggles at that point. And like, because there were a lot of mental health things, there were just a lot of financial things going on, a lot of loss. And so I thought, I owe it to my readers to be as honest as I can. I've always been honest with them. Like, why would I? That was actually part of the problem, was that I'd been holding this back, that I'd been holding these feelings back, and I hadn't shared them. And so I'm like, I have to share it now. And yeah, I don't have any answers. And yes, I'm still in the middle of it. Like, I think it's kind of funny. I don't know that we ever get through it. It's one of those things, like everything is always changing. Like, we just have to be adaptable, and we have to be like, just go with the flow maybe sometimes. And I
Yes.
think we have to talk about it. That was the other thing, because I just felt like no one was talking about it. And coming up as a mommy blogger, I'd been really honest about parenting and my challenges with parenting, or my wins and my losses. And there was such a community around parenting and giving advice, and there just wasn't for middle age. Like, there just wasn't at all. And I thought, I need to create a community where we can actually like talk about peasing, and we can like talk about hot flashes, and talk about the fact that like we want to murder people some days. And so so I thought, but then we also have to talk about the positive. I think that was the other thing, was to focus really on the positive. I mean, just yesterday I released a new podcast. My podcast is No Pants Required with Jenn
Yeah.
Mann. And I just released one yesterday with a woman named Kristen Shaw, who's 52. She's on her way right now to race across a desert in a 4-wheel drive car with no GPS, just a map and a compass, basically, and she's like, I'm trying all kinds of things at 50. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that's where we should be headed, instead of kind of wallowing. But sometimes I have to wallow first and then get through it.
Well, it is. And I think that's what is so honest about this book, is that those are the pieces that it's very difficult for those types of things to come out naturally if you are somebody that is like sharing them on social, or like you share your life on social, or you post things about your business or your life or whatever publicly. When you are in the middle of the wallow, that is not the time when you're like, oh, I should really capture this for Instagram. So
Yeah.
therefore those are never the things that are actually really showing up day to day when we're scrolling through these perfect pumpkin spice days of fall, because when I'm in fetal position, it's not really crossing my mind to be like, oh, hold on, let me just stage this quickly and like get my ring light out and make sure I'm like capturing the disaster that's happening around me,
Right.
even
Yes.
though it's happening. So I agree with you. I think that it's so important to just speak it, to just like talk about those things, because it does feel really lonely. And I think the fact that so many of us have gone through either occasionally or constant feelings of feeling like I must be the only person that's going through this. Like, that's such a human nature thing for
Mm-hmm.
us to feel that we're the only ones going through it. And until we say it out loud, we all can just keep on playing this like pretend game that oh no, I've never felt that way before.
Yeah.
Well, that's not someone I want to hang out with.
Well, and that's someone who's not being honest with themselves and the people around them. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that isn't someone I want to hang out with. Yeah, I just think like, I think we've all been, the nice thing, I really do think the nice thing about some of the younger generations is that they are kind of making it more normal to talk about your feelings and mental health and your boundaries, and, all the things that science kind of, you're 40, I'm 50, but it's like growing up, like, my parents didn't tell me to like enforce my boundaries. My parents were just like, you'll do what I say, and I don't care how uncomfortable you feel or whatever. I mean, it wasn't like I was
Yeah.
abused or anything, but it just wasn't like, it's just interesting to see kind of what my kids are like, what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. And it kind of empowers me, because I think with me, like, I have to have really firm boundaries. Like I let you in, but I only let you in so far, and I only let
Yeah.
you into certain parts of my life. And so I just have really firm boundaries and always have. And I realized that a lot of women especially don't have that. Like they don't have the boundaries, they don't know how to enforce them. And so that was really important for me to get across too, that now that you're 40 and you have no more F's to give, like
Yes.
now's the time, like put out those boundaries, because who cares?
That's exactly it. And I think that is honestly the like biggest concept that I took away from reading your book is just there is this new feeling of starting this decade of 40. It's definitely a new feeling. And I was excited for it. I was not one of those people who was like not happy to start a new decade. I was very excited about it and ready to just sort of like embrace this next
Mm-hmm.
thing. It felt like a big deal. But for myself too, as I raise my daughters who are 14 and 11, we span all of the age groups here between your kids and mine, but like talking to them about boundaries and for them to talk to me and be like, oh man, someone really crossed my boundaries at school today. I'm like, yes, we've nailed it. Like it feels
Yeah.
so good for them to just be able to verbalize. It doesn't mean we've solved any problems. It just means that they're able to like verbalize and recognize that it's okay to ask for what you need. And that's, I think, the thing that I was highlighting over and over in the book was just asking for what you need and just taking the next right step. We don't have to have it all figured out yesterday.
Well, that's it. And nobody's a mind reader, because it's not even just like enforcing your boundaries, but asking for help too. Because I think I also have a group on Facebook called Midlife Bites, and we have like, I don't know, 30,000 women in there or something like that. And there's so many women in there who are upset with their husbands, that their husbands don't step up and they don't do enough around the house. And then I'm always like, well, did you ask them? Did you tell them? They're like small children. Like they need a
Yeah.
list. And if you give them a list, like they can probably do it. Like if they can read, they can probably do it. And but it's like my husband's a prime example. Like he'll do anything I ask him, but I have to ask him because he's not a mind reader. Now I feel like he should just look around and see what needs to be done.
Right.
But after 22 years of marriage, I know that's not going to happen. And I just have to let that go. And so now I'm just like, here's your list. I need you to do these things, or I'm going to lose my mind and drive away. So
Yeah.
you figure out, like
Your
I need
choice.
you to help me, or I'm going to go crazy. And I think that's the other really cool thing about this book, was that I've heard from husbands who've read it, that the wives either gave it to them to read, or they found it on their own because they're really cool progressive husbands that were like,
Right.
I should read this and figure out what's going on with my wife. And so to get these emails from these men who are just like, oh my God, I had no idea. I had no idea my wife was feeling like this. I'm like, yeah, ask her, she'll
Yeah.
tell you all about it. Because that's the other thing. I was surprised. Like, oh gosh, like a few months ago, I went out with these women. They're all in their 40s, 50s. They're all recently divorced. And they were talking about how they had never farted in front of their ex-husband. And I was like, what? I was like, what does he think you do? Like, he thinks you don't fart? Like, what
Right.
is what is happening here? And they were just like, oh, I can never. And I'm like, no, next guy you're with, you're like first date, you're just farting. Like we're
First.
just like he needs to understand that like we do these things. Like they're
Yes.
like, I think that's the other thing, that they think we're like some sort of like magical creature. And this is why, like, oh, women, they're so hard to understand. No, we're not. Ask us. We'll tell you what we need. And so instead of waiting for people to ask, it's time for us to just say and tell what we need, and what we deserve too. That's the other thing.
I love that. What was the dynamic like between you and your husband as you wrote this book and the book came out? Because you reference him a lot in the
Mm-hmm.
book and
Mm-hmm.
reference some of the challenges that you had been going through and life and things that all of us experience. But it's always crossed my mind, me not being a writer, I've never had this experience where something that I've like put out to the entire world in a published piece of art, all of a sudden you're like everything about your life like out there for people to see. And I always wonder like, but what's it really like at home? Like, is it
Right.
really super casual between them as this comes out, or is it like, oh, we got to deal with all of this?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I'm probably the most honest about my relationship, and just um, how we are still are struggling. I think at one point everybody kind of thought like, oh, you guys are so cute together. You guys have like the best marriage. And we really did for a long time. But I think as we neared, I think I was like 47, 46, something like that. Um, we kind of like our paths were kind of like separating. Like we both wanted different things at that point. And instead of talking about it, we just sort of went on our paths. And then one day it was like, hey, where did he go? Like,
Right.
where is she? And then we both felt really abandoned by the other. And so that was, whereas we both felt like, no, you abandoned me. No, I didn't abandon you. You
Yeah.
abandoned me. And so we had this kind of thing. And so when I was writing the book, I just decided I was going to put it all out on the on the page. And it is the only book that I've not let him read first. Normally I let him read it. I want his input. And this one I was like, I can't let you read it. Like I have to feel like I can say whatever I want to say, and I can't let you read it. And he was like, okay. And so I didn't let him read it. And then finally your book gets to a point where it's not out yet, but it's beyond changes. Like you can't make any more changes. And so at that point I was like, okay, you can read it now, like if you want to. And at that point he was like, and at that point we'd been in counseling and we'd kind of gotten over that hump. And he was like, I really don't want to read it because I don't want to relive that. Like I don't want to go back and like
Mm,
relive all that. And so I was like, cool, 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 me neither. And then when it came out, a lot of the interviews, of course, we're all virtual because we're still kind of, in major
yeah.
COVID, so everybody was virtual. And his desk is like, 5 feet from mine. So he's right here usually. And every interviewer would start with, dang, so you really like you went there, didn't you? You just threw your husband like out to the, under the bus, out to the wolves, into the deep end. And I'm just like, mm. And so every time I'd get off, he's like, what did you say about me? And I'm like, you're welcome to read it. We have boxes of them in the hallway. Like go grab a book and read it. And so I don't think he's read it. If he hasn't talked to me about it, but it's I think at some point you have to decide, like, are you going to fix this or are you going to walk away from this?
Yeah.
And we'd kind of reached that point, and we both decided that we probably needed to get some outside help. And so we got a counselor. And once we started talking to the counselor, we realized that our problems were kind of small compared to a lot of people's problems, and that they were manageable and that we could work through them. And so that's what we've been doing. And it's I mean, who's ever, like, nobody's house is like always perfect and happy go
No.
lucky.
Yeah.
But and I think for our kids' sake too, like our kids were caught in it and they were pretty upset. And so just kind of working through the whole family through it and trying to figure out what's best for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Um, Midlife is a long process, I'm realizing. And like you said, might not ever really have a finish line. It kind of just evolves. What would you say your best advice would be for somebody listening who's currently feeling like you were, or maybe sometimes still are, as you wrote this book, when our worlds are falling apart and everything just feels like we're maybe not at the place we wish to be, or we see other people's lives and think they have it all together? What's your best piece of advice that's helped yourself that you would give?
I think the best piece of advice I have, and this is my personal experience, and this is what works for me, but I have to remember to I always say, like, I have to put my blinders on. Like, I know what
Mm-hmm.
I do. I know what I do best. Like, I know, like, deep down, I know who I am. I know what I want. And I have to stop comparing myself to everybody because they're not comparing themselves to me. They've got their blinders on and they're doing their thing.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing. So depending on, like, but that's me really, for like work, for friendships, for, all that kind of stuff, marriages, that I'm like, oh, everyone's marriage looks great. No, it doesn't. Like, put your blinders on. And then I think the other thing I hear a lot from women our age is that they're stuck, that they feel stuck. And I don't think anybody needs to be stuck. I think that is the really cool thing about now having the second half of my life in front of me, not even a half at this point, but the second act of my life is coming up here. And now we're in a position where we have so much more experience and we have so many more skills, and we are hopefully braver and a little bit stronger. And now is the time to maybe take that leap and get unstuck,
Love
because nobody
that.
has to be stuck.
It's my favorite part about the work that I get to do with clients is this is exactly what I do for people's businesses and their lives, is like help them get unstuck and find more joy. And I think I really did used to think, and maybe this was just my like stars in my eyes 20-year-old self, who really did think that there would be a finish line at some point to cross, that all of a sudden the things that felt complicated or difficult or hard to make a decision about or complicated relationships or blah 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 everything else would all of a sudden in one foul swoop all come together and be like, oh, everything's wonderful now, you know? And I really
Mm-hmm.
do think, like, I didn't think I was a naive person, but I felt like that's really what I thought at certain points.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was like well into my 20s and then throughout my 30s and recognizing that as that much time went on and realizing, okay, wait a second, this has never yet happened once where
Mm-hmm.
every single thing is just feeling perfect Instagram worthy at the exact same time. Wait a second, that's just fictitious. That's just what I'm thinking is what other people are experiencing, which isn't actually the reality. And that was a wonderful shift and a huge realization to occur that really has changed the trajectory of my life, to have realized this in my 20s, later on in my 20s, so that the rest of it could feel like, okay, I do just get to do me. And my therapist's analogy is always like, you use the blinders, hers is always like, stay in your own hula hoop. So
Yeah.
it's just this hula hoop. And it's always been a really easy one to like use with the kids and stuff too, but
Yeah.
just imagining your hula hoop, and you kind of have to keep moving a little bit
That's
in order
great.
for that hula hoop to stay going. But if it touches somebody else's, it's a very slippery slope to try
Yeah.
to keep it going. And
Yeah.
and that's always in my head all the time throughout the day, just thinking like, yeah, like stay in my own hula hoop. It's nobody else's business what happens
Yes.
in my hula hoop.
Right. And I don't think there is a finish line. I used to think like the finish line would move, but I just don't think there is a finish line. We're just
Yeah,
constantly evolving and things are changing. The world is changing. I mean, if you'd asked me, 5 years ago where we'd be, today, it would not be anywhere like what we're living through right now.
totally.
So, it's just like all these things change and you have no control over it. So you have to be flexible. You have to be kind of nimble and just take advantage of the opportunities that come up or make an opportunity, make
Yeah,
yourself something and not worry so much about what everybody else is doing. We
a
spend so
hundred
much time
percent.
worrying about everybody else.
Well, it is. And to really remind ourselves that everybody has the potential to worry about everybody else all the time if we really wanted to. Like if we
Mhm.
all wanted to sit stuck in that perpetual cycle, we really could. So what would you say? You've mentioned a number of different groups and things that you've like created and been involved with so that you can really help support women who are going through this in honest ways. What is your favorite part about being able to like connect honestly and authentically with women as you've moved throughout your career in different ways?
Um, I think my favorite part is more just giving women a place where they can talk and where someone will listen to them. I think that a lot of women feel very isolated and lonely at home, at work, in their friendships or lack of friendships. Friendship was it's such a huge topic in my midlife bites group that so many middle-aged women don't know how to make friends or keep friends. And so I think the part that I really like is when I see these groups kind of come together and I see them create a community where they are supportive of each other. And sometimes like
Mhm.
I don't even have to be there. You know what I mean? Like I've got so many groups. I can't be in there every day like facilitating every group. And so now they kind of have like this life of their own. And it was funny like a few months ago in this midlife bites group, most of my other groups like they know who I am because it's like I don't know how to explain it, but like those groups, like I created them years ago, like they know me. But this group has sort of taken off on its own between the book and like a lot of them don't even know there's a book about it. Like it's very odd. And so like a few months ago, some lady in the group was like, "Who is this Jenn person, and why does she keep talking so much? Like, who does she think she is?" And I was like, "I'm so glad you feel so comfortable to say that. You're booted." No, but
Yeah.
I was like, get out. But I like that it kind of has its own it's taken on its own life for better or for worse. I mean, it's a wild west in there sometimes, but I do like that it's kind of the space where women are they feel comfortable where they can share and I won't say no judgment because there's always judgment, but
Yeah.
a little bit less than, maybe putting it out there for the whole world to see.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Do you have any upcoming new books or new things that are coming out that you're allowed to talk about and share?
Well, I'm working on the book proposal right now for the follow-up to Midlife Bites, and I hope to get that turned in shortly, and hopefully they'll buy it. If they won't, then we'll figure something else out for that. But um, when it's nonfiction, you have to give them a proposal. The book's not done yet, so you just tell them what you're going to write about and how you think it's going to go. So I'm working on that, and you give them some chapters, and that's what I'm still finishing is the chapters. And my working title for that is Nice Women Don't Talk About Such Things. So we'll see. I don't know if the publisher will go with that one, but
I love it. I can only imagine that in these groups that you have, that it's just like such a wealth of like stories and inspo and things that are just like coming at you all the time of like boom, 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 like hearing all of these things that you're like, I don't know how you don't have this like percolating like 50,000 books in your head all the time.
Well, that's it with the Midlife Bites book. I think the group was in existence for a few months before I started sort of fleshing that book out. And I really I went through it and really read like every single post and every single comment, trying to figure out like what at the top, like I know what, like I made a list of like what I want to talk about, but I'm like, does everybody want to talk about these things? And am I missing things? And so with the Nice Ladies Don't Talk About Such Things, that's really going to come more from personal experience because my brand is people I want to punch in the throat. I say whatever I want to say, and not everybody agrees with it. And I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, nice ladies don't talk like that, or nice ladies don't talk about such things. And so so that one will be more like, I think that's going to be more personal, because I really don't have anybody to kind of get ideas from, I guess. And I don't really share anybody else's stories. That was the other thing Midlife Bites, the members were kind of worried about. Like, I'm not sharing their stories. I'm sharing my own stories. So it's not their stories. And then the other thing I'm working on, I have, I think 5 people I want to punch in throat books at this point. And so I started working just this week, actually. I have a Substack, which is like a newsletter, like that's where I'm doing my blogging at.
Yeah.
And I started, what I'm doing is I'm starting to write a book on there. So if you're subscribed and you're a member, then you're going to start, and that'll be cool because you'll see like all the behind the scenes and how I work and how it's done. And so
love
and so
it.
that'll be people I want to punch in through a book. And then I don't know what I'll do with it at that point. We'll see. I'll probably publish it myself, I think, because
Yeah, why not?
why not? Well, because I do both. Like I do, like I'm traditionally published and I'm self-published, so it kind of depends. But I feel like a traditional publisher is probably not going to want it after I've let like thousands of people read it. So I'll be like, who's going to buy it, Jen? I'm like, we'll find some people.
Find a few new ones. That is so great. I love that. I love following along on the things that you're doing. I'm going to give a shameless plug for you. I kind of match your book today.
You did. Yeah, you chose the pink.
It is so good. Midlife Bites. Like, just go grab it. Give yourself a light read. I wish that it was like longer because I read it way too fast. I started actually reading a little bit slower because I wanted it to last longer, because it was just so enjoyable that every day I would like look forward to opening it up again.
Thank you.
So thank you. Appreciate so much you sharing your story and your background and how you got here. And your authenticity and the way that you just keep it real is so inspiring. I always like to wrap up these podcasts with some fun questions. This whole episode's been really fun, but some fun questions to get to know even a few more details about yourself. So what is one new thing that you've tried lately?
Oh man. And this sucks because you warned me these were coming and I'm still not prepared. I'm terrible at this. One new thing that I've tried lately. Well, okay, I'm going to say writing a book online with everybody watching and giving me like instant feedback. Like normally it's perfect when I put it out. Not perfect, but you know what I mean? Like it's polished when I put it out. This is going to be rough as crap and we're going to see what people think.
That is really brave. Like really, really brave of you to do that. But I think that's so cool to just challenge yourself in this new way, because I would imagine things can start maybe feeling like stagnant, or what's like the next step if you're just like doing similar things often. But I've never heard of anybody doing this before, so I'm excited to hear all about it.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
What is one thing that some people sometimes misunderstand about you that you wish they knew?
I think the one thing that people, I think they think that there's a couple of things. I think they think I'm mean because people I want to punch in the throat. So everyone's always surprised when they meet me and they're like, "Oh my God, you're nice." And I'm
My
like, I'm
favorite
only
story in your book is with Dave.
oh,
Dave, when you talk about that story, I'm like, I could read that over and over because I'm like, it infuriates me and is like, go Jen, as you're reading it simultaneously.
there's always a Dave
There's
out there.
always a Dave.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that's it. I am only I like to say, I give the energy that I receive. And so if you come for me, I will finish you. But if we are fine, then we are fine. I'm super fun. I'm super great. Like, if you're nice, I'm nice. But and then I think the other thing I think is people, I can't tell you how many times to go out like socially with people and they have to like tell me like, Jen, this is off the record. Like don't tell anybody
Right.
this. And they think I'm a big blabbermouth.
Like you're just
I'm
suddenly
gonna,
gonna like record the quote and like put it in your next book with their
yeah,
name and address and phone number on it. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
I love it. What is a food and or drink that you are hooked on right now?
I'm always hooked on Trader Joe's chai, and especially now that it's October, it's chai time.
Right time.
So I'm always hooked, and I'm always mad when it's sold out.
So fall is your jam then if chai
I
is
love
your
fall.
drink. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got married in the fall. My kids are born in the fall. Fall's my thing.
It's a good season.
I mean, good grief. It's perfect right now because I don't have to wear a coat or anything because I've got my internal thermometer going on here, my internal furnace. So
Right.
yeah, it's perfect.
It agrees with your stage of life too. Love
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Where are you hoping to travel to next?
Ooh, where am I hoping to travel to next? I would like to get to Europe. It's been a while since I've been there, and my kids would like to get to France, they were telling me, and my son is a senior this year, so I guess I gotta hop to it if I want him to come with
I
us.
know, like the time is like I was thinking that too. My firstborn just started high school this year, so I've got 4 years before she leaves. But I'm like, this doesn't feel long enough now. All of a sudden, it felt so slow along the way,
Mhm.
and now it feels like it's just like way, way, way too fast.
It's going very quickly. And I'd been warned that senior year does that. But I think the nice part is that, when he was 5, I used to cry and I'd be like, I'm not ready. But now that he's like almost 18, it's like he's ready and I'm ready. I mean, he checked out last year. It's like
Yeah.
he's got his own
Mhm.
life. He does his own thing. And he's around if we want him to be around, but we kind of let him do his own thing and he's ready, which would be so much better than a kid who's like, I can't go. I want to live in your basement for the next 20 years.
Yes. But you know what? I think part of that too is that your this is how I see it, at least, not having had somebody of my kids leave the house yet. So I can't speak from real life experience, but just from all the stages and how they felt along the ways. I always feel like when I have been taking better care of myself, and that isn't always crystal clear in the moment of it, but looking back is a very powerful thing. But when I have taken care of myself and when I feel really good about the things I have going on in my life, and I have things that I'm looking forward to, and I'm feeling really like happy and joyful about my career and about friendships and just whatever, life in
Mhm.
general, even if there's really hard things going on, but I still have things that are good, then I find that those like stages and those things, like then the idea of like leaving the house or whatever, like moving on to something else doesn't feel so hard because I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be okay too. This actually
Yeah.
feels exciting for me too to get to these like new stages versus like fetal position, stuffing my face with chips because I'm just so sad and want
I
life
mean,
to
I'll do
stay.
that for like the first week and then I'll be back. Then I'll be like,
Yeah.
your room is now my craft room. Get out.
You're never coming back here. Totally. I love it.
I'll get you an
Um,
Airbnb for Thanksgiving.
last but not least, what is bringing you joy right now?
What is bringing me joy right now? It's really kind of like a weird personal thing. Since February, my daughter has had some really scary health problems. And in the last like 2 weeks, she's been doing amazing. And so that is bringing me great joy.
Oh, yes. Our babies are always our babies, no matter how old they are.
Right.
Oh, that's so great. I'm really happy that she's doing well. Jen, thank you for bringing your joy and your light and your honest and realness to the Joy Curator podcast today. This was just so much fun. And you have brought me so much joy today that I have gotten to meet in real life, the author of a book that has been so inspiring for me. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, we got it.